Locked On Vikings, Locked On Colts. We have a Week 15 matchup going on, regular season coming to a close. Let's break it down on the Locked On NFL crossover Thursday.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Vikings fans, Colts fans? Welcome to Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Vikings and Locked On Colts podcasts. For Colts fans, I am Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. We're the home team, so I'm leading things here with Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts. For the Vikings fans, hello, Jake. This episode of the Locked On Vikings and Locked On Colts podcast, as all crossovers are, is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is so much fun, so easy to play. Just pick a few of your players and whether or not they'll do better or worse than their Prize Picks projection. No huge pools of 6,000 people, no like entire tinkering fantasy lineups, just simple. You against the house. Can you predict how well this player is going to do? We know that you guys love Prize Picks. We love Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. So the key stories going into this game, I guess for the Vikings, the biggest thing that we're talking about right now is the job security, I guess, of the defensive coordinator, Ed Donatel. The Vikings defense has been a horror show, last in the league. They've given up 400 yards in 5 straight weeks. Including games against Mike White's Jets and Mac Jones's Patriots, like ailing offenses. So don't come at me and say the Colts offense is bad, because we gave up 400 yards to those too. But your offense is having problems too. I guess Jonathan Taylor's been a little quieter than usual. What's going on with Matt Ryan? So let me, I guess, start on your end of things. How much confidence do you have in the Colts offense against what is at least arguably, if not inarguably, the worst defense in the league?
Yeah, so the Colts, the Colts offense hasn't done much to garner confidence whatsoever. Like in good matchups where you think they can take advantage, it just doesn't happen. It tends to come down to the offensive line and their lack of protection. And even when Matt Ryan does have pretty good protection, he's become this turnover prone, just kind of bumbling guy who doesn't seem like a 15-year vet anymore. But with that being said, they are coming off their bye week. They had an insane November, so much turnover, fired offensive coordinator, fired Frank Reich. They promoted a play caller who'd never done it before in Parks Frazier. Now that they've had their bye week, I think the expectation is they've had some time to decompress and catch up and maybe be able to formulate a plan of what to do moving forward. Because so far it seems like everything's been flying by the seat of their pants. The offense has been super predictable and bland. I mean, they have Jonathan Taylor, but the other team knows that, it shouldn't just be run, pass every time. It's just been really vanilla. And I think this is a good opportunity for a get-right game for the offense. Like you said, they're dead last in pass defense, overall defense. I just think they have more weapons and are capable of doing more than what they've shown at times. And there's a few things I'm really looking for in this matchup. And it's really offensively is everything I'm looking for. I have confidence in their defense overall, but it's the offensive side of the ball that has all the question marks.
It feels like that's the side of the ball that is going to get most of the attention, because both the Vikings defense and Colts offense are the ones that are, in the worst way, kind of getting all the spotlight. Meanwhile, the Vikings offense with Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson in particular has been humming. So that is an interesting side of the ball. We'll get to that when we talk more about matchups later. Tell me about, I guess, the nature of the Colts run game. I always thought of the Colts, and I know the last couple of years the offensive line has sort of deteriorated, but I think of Quentin Nelson and Jonathan Taylor and all of those guys. Is it a health issue, or is it just something with the offense as it is, the staff is shaken up and stuff like that? I obviously want to hear your thoughts about Jeff Saturday right now, who's at least won one game. I guess, how do the Colts want to attack a team if they can have their sort of pick of the litter.
Yeah, so they would go powered through Jonathan Taylor if every game script went to their plan. It would be Jonathan Taylor running the show the whole time with Matt Ryan just picking what the defense gave him. And they've been able to do that a couple times. That Raiders win and Jeff Saturday's debut was the most recent example of it. But yeah, it has been a little bit of health and regression just from some of these offensive line pillars. Quentin Nelson has had some like back issues dating back a year or two, and he's still playing at like a Pro Bowl level, but you no longer really see him playing at the Hall of Fame level that we got used to seeing him. So it's natural to say he's regressed, but he's still better than most guards. So he's still been their best offensive lineman. Ryan Kelly just does not look like the same guy. He's had some injury issues as well throughout his career. These guys just in general, the whole line, and of course they've had to fill in left tackle and right guard. They did a pretty bad job planning for that this offseason, and they've had a ton of turnover there. The line just doesn't get a lot of push, and Jonathan Taylor himself had issues. He had an ankle that bothered him for weeks, but even with that, even when he was healthy at times, it didn't look like he trusted how to run behind that line. You know, like how holes opened and how the run scheme opened things up last year, he was very comfortable with. Obviously, he led the league in rushing by like 500 yards. But all those things just aren't there this year. And it's really weird because for the most part, it's the same offensive lineman outside of two of them. But even Matt Pryor, who has started most of the games this year in different spots, he was the sixth offensive lineman last year. They saw him a lot. Same offensive line coach and Chris Strasser. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what's going on with all these guys who have been here and have had success, just suddenly just not getting the job done. So it's really curious. I would imagine that Taylor will probably look pretty good coming off this. He's looked better lately these last 2 or 3 weeks before the bye week, getting some of that explosiveness back. You used to see huge plays by him all throughout last year, and we're starting to kind of see some of those chunk runs again. So hopefully for their sake, he and the run game and the blocking are heating back up. But there's just been so many issues this year with that whole group.
Yeah. So as this is a Saturday game, we have a little bit more injury info. And there's actually a couple of headlines that are probably worth telling to Colts fans too, off of the injury report. The Vikings have like a flu going through, like their defense had a flu virus like decimate them. And we've had I don't know if it's the flu. It's just illness. I keep calling it the flu because that's just what like my brain defaults to, but it's some illness. But the big one is watch the Vikings injury report on Thursday. And by the time people listen to this, they might already see it because that's the end of the injury report. Watch to see if Danielle Hunter practices. So he missed all of 2020 with a neck problem, with a herniated disc in his neck. And like neck surgery ended his season, that the JJ Watt thing. He's got a neck thing and he was limited on Wednesday. So we're all holding our breath a little bit to say, okay, is that a different injury? Is it aggravating the same thing? If he is a DNP on Friday, I would probably be really comfortable saying he's not going to play. And that's going to be a big deal on the defensive side of the ball, as it has been for the last 2 years as Danielle Hunter's been out. So that's something to watch, but the Vikings are also getting some guys back. Christian Darrisaw has been out with concussion issues for like a month. It's been really scary, honestly, but he is past the protocol and he is now slowly easing his way back in. They seem pretty much like they're expecting him to go. They're expecting Harrison Smith to go, who missed the Detroit game with an illness. So they're getting on the whole a little bit healthier, but that Danielle Hunter situation is something in terms of storylines. It's something to watch. Look, we have some other matchups I want to ask you about. I want to ask you about what the Colts do about like star receivers. Of course, we got Justin Jefferson. I want to see what the strategy might be there. And then, of course, we got to predict this thing. We've got bet online odds and all of that stuff. So that's coming up. But first, it's the holiday season, and going home is a place where you should feel safe. It is, if you don't feel safe at home, or if you want a little bit of help feeling a little safer at home, check out Simply Safe. It's the #1 rated home security system, and Simply Safe is offering Locked On listeners a 40% off discount on a new security system. Don't put this off. Don't miss your chance to save big on Simply Safe. They have their Fast Protect technology, 24/7 professional monitoring exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and assess whether a threat is real or whether the cat walked into the wrong room or a raccoon went by or something like that, and dispatch the proper authorities when that is needed. So don't miss your chance to save big on my favorite security system. Get 40% off of any new system at simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl today. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl. There is no safe like Simply Safe. So thanks so much for making this Locked On crossover your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. It is a daily show, half an hour or less, all the biggest games, all the biggest news, all the headlines from the wide world of all sports, from World Cup to the NFL to tennis if it's going on, anything, basketball, hockey, all that stuff. Check that out wherever you find your favorite shows. Jake, I'll ask you the Justin Jefferson question I teased in just a minute, but first you hit me with one. All right. What is a matchup that you are looking forward to or want to know more about? What is the matchup that is gripping you for this one?
Yeah, so I couldn't help but really look at the struggles that some of the offensive linemen have had, especially on the interior. I know Garrett Bradbury could be making his way back. He's kind of had limited participation. But Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner, that is a high-end defensive tackle duo.
DeForest Buckner made one of our favorite lowlights a couple years ago against Drew Samia, who I don't believe is on a team right now. Check me on that, though. Yeah, that's
the safety, I think.
DeForest Buckner has made some bad memories for us. And I think he had a pretty big hand in beating us the last time we were in the playoffs when he was back in San Francisco. That was one of the last games he played for the 49ers before the trade.
So yeah, big thorn in the side there. It looks like it's a young group on the interior. I don't what's the gauge on whether Bradbury plays? Does it seem optimistic?
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic that he would play. Okay. He was apparently very close with an ankle injury to playing last week, but they opted for caution. The thing is, the Vikings have such a stranglehold on their division and the playoffs right now. If they can win one more game throughout the rest of the season, they will win the NFC North. And even if they lose out, the Lions would have to win out to take the NFC North. So they're pretty comfortable there. And I think like one more win, and then they can't do worse than like the 3rd seed. So they feel pretty good about that, and they feel good being cautious. And let's go into the playoffs healthy rather than going into the playoffs injured, but with, a 10% chance at one place up the rankings, So they played it really cautious last week. They might say, we're just going to keep playing it cautious, in which case it would be Austin Schlottmann, not Chris Reed, who I know your co-host Zach is obsessed with. He lost the battle. He lost a backup center battle to Austin Schlottmann, but he's been on the 53 as like a reserve kind of swing guy, and we just haven't gotten injured enough to need him, but that's why he's here. I would guess that he plays. However, Bradbury's whole thing is that he struggles with like bigger, more powerful defensive tackles. And I think if you're Stewart or if you're Buckner, that quickness has given him issues as well. If you can just bull rush right into him, that has been a struggle, but they've been able to give him a little more help. I would say watch if Darisaw plays, because if Darisaw plays, they'll split him out on the moon and they'll leave him on an island and they'll slide protections away from him all day long. And then those defensive tackles can just get caught in like a wash of bodies, and it'll be way, way harder to get that one-on-one on Bradbury that you would be looking for. Although last time we played the Colts were looking for one-on-ones with Drew Samia. In this case, it would be Ed Ingram, who's a rookie, who has been struggling. He's been a rookie. And I think that's probably a better idea if you're the Colts to go after him. DeForest Buckner on Ed Ingram, for me, if that can become a one-on-one, that terrifies me. I would hate that. Because that quickness, there have been some ugly lowlights. Rookie guard, it happens, right? But that's
to be expected.
Where we're at.
We've seen plenty of that this year for sure.
Oh, I'm sure, on the offensive line, which is another interesting thing on our end of things. We also have Harrison Phillips is having some back issues, and that I'm way less optimistic about him playing. No idea what to think about Danielle Hunter, but we might have our front four, which the Vikings don't blitz a lot at all. They rush for and do their, games and stunts and stuff. And it sucks because they can't cover long enough for that stuff to develop. But when they've got to rely on their backups even more, that could become an even greater issue. So this might be I've been telling every opponent in these crossovers, this is your get right game for the offense. Like, congratulations, you get to have a bounce back day, because it's just such a disaster on the defensive side of the ball. But I want to stick with the Vikings offense. Justin Jefferson is leading the league in receiving right now. He is on pace to challenge franchise records. He's already broken some franchise records this year. He's doing some absolutely incredible and amazing stuff. When there is a guy like that is just so larger than life, and the Vikings have Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne, definitely no slouch of other guys in the room. What is the Colts' answer to that?
Well, I've got good news for you, because 2 of the Colts' top 4 corners have not practiced yet this week. Kenny Moore, who is one of the better slot defenders in the league, I don't think he's going to play. He missed.
I think he shut down Jefferson in the first meeting, although Jefferson was a second game and he wasn't even technically a starter yet.
Yeah, and Kenny's not playing like he used to in this new scheme. I mean, he's still pretty good, but it doesn't look like he'll be out there regardless. He's got kind of a lower leg thing. Didn't play 2 weeks ago before the bye. Hasn't practiced yet, so it doesn't look good. The Colts have had this illness thing just wreaking havoc last 3-4 weeks as well. Wow. Brandon Faison has not practiced yet this week either with an illness. So really just leaves Stephon Gilmore and Isaiah Rodgers. Behind them, it's undrafted rookie Dallas Flowers and Tony Brown, who has been a reserve throughout his career, mostly a special teamer. So on instances where Justin Jefferson is not against Stephon Gilmore, I expect him to just eat. Even against Gilmore, he's going to have his wins, I'm sure. He's an elite player, arguably the best receiver in the league, so he could beat anybody. I wouldn't be surprised to see him pop off for 200. He's just that type of player. But yeah, there's really going to be no good way for the Colts to defend this. They could bracket him, bring some extra safety help. They've got kind of a wealth of safeties at the moment. Julian Blackman, Rodney McLeod, Rodney Thomas. Nick Cross hasn't really played since early in the season, but they've got some bodies at safety that they could roll out and maybe make some coverages exotic. Gus Bradley's had a couple weeks now to prepare for this passing attack. So as confident as I am overall in the Colts defense, their body work on the season, I don't love this matchup this week, especially if Yannick Ngakoue isn't getting home.
Oh, another old friend.
Right. Yeah, you guys are very familiar. If Christian Darrisaw is back, that's just probably gonna wipe Ngakoue off. Kwity Paye is really their more consistent defensive end. So
that makes me so happy. I loved him so much pre-draft, and people made fun of me for it.
Yeah, he's had some injury issues, but he's been their most consistent, best defensive end when he's on the field. So he's developing nicely. He's been able to get some pressure and be pretty disruptive, but I'm worried about that Vikings passing attack this week for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because these are not 2 teams that are known for, boat racing, 40-yard point games, but it feels like this is one where points could get scored. Which kind of brings me to we should start talking about our predictions and the odds. We'll take those from Bet Online in just 1 second, and we'll talk about how we feel about it.
Yeah, betonline.net is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, we've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you guys obviously do, you're here with us, they've got that as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts. And on a little more serious note, we all kind of have to be aware of this at all times. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride, but nah, you live nearby. Don't worry about it, right? What are the odds that you'll get pulled over anyways? And if so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. There's never a good option with any of these things. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk, and the results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers like they should be to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. All right, Luke. So I don't know about you, but I really don't know what to think about this game in finality. I could see it going either way. Like the Colts played the Cowboys strong through 3 quarters last week. You could make, or 2 weeks
That's
ago.
One way to describe that game.
Yeah, you can make an argument they should have won, and then the 4th quarter happened, and then 33 unanswered points came with it. You guys know all about that. Was it 40-3?
40-3, and you guys experienced that in a quarter.
Yes. So we've both been victimized by the Cowboys in recent weeks. So I really don't know. What are you thinking for a final score on this one?
Well, I like to look at the line to kind of give me a sort of a baseline and see if I want to go over or under it. So the line at BetOnline is -4 right now, favoring the Vikings. Over under is 48.5. So think of that as something like a 27-23 kind of game. That would be a push and the over by like 1 or 2 points. So I think more scoring can happen than that. And I do like the Vikings to cover here, mostly because I just don't believe in what Matt Ryan can do on offense. And I know the Vikings have kind of let other quarterbacks do that, but I think what's wrong with Matt Ryan right now, like I've watched enough Colts games this year. I haven't watched everyone, but I've watched enough Colts games this year to see how the ball comes out of his arm, and it's just floating. It's just not there. And I think that's one of the things that can really prevent an offense from being able to victimize this defense the way that somebody like Mac Jones, who's got a fine arm, but could make throws, right? And he was able to find a bunch of production. Mike White's arm is no world beater, but it was good. Matt Ryan's arm looks like it's time for him to hang it up, you know? And I think like we'd all be shocked if he didn't retire, right? Like that's the way he's playing. And I just don't trust it. And I don't trust the Colts on the whole. I certainly don't trust the Jeff Saturday situation. And this has been, I mean, I've been crowing about this on Locked On NFL for weeks. This is not just me saying I love my team and I think they're going to win. I've been lambasting the Colts for the way that they've approached this season, because this was a winnable NFC or AFC South. And to just kind of pack it in the way that they did, going with Ellinger and all of that stuff. I have not liked the way the Colts, I think Colts fans deserve better. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the Vikings to cover. I'm going to take the over, though, because I do still think there can be enough scoring on both sides of the ball to cover that 27-23 kind of vibe. I will go with the Vikings can only win 1-score games. If it's a 2-score game, the Vikings can't win it. So it'll be a 1-score game. And I will go with 30-26. Call it a push. There we go. 30-24. How about that? Now they can cover.
Okay. Yeah, so the Colts don't have any business winning this game, and they really shouldn't. Like, I have more confidence in the Vikings, but I just have had this feeling all week that this is the type of game the Colts win, especially coming off their bye week, and they've had so many distractions in the last month or two that maybe they've had a chance to breathe and can approach this game. I just think there are certain areas that should make a real difference, especially that interior defensive line. I'd really like to see them come through and dictate a game once again. I have the Colts actually winning 23-20. I don't feel good about it, but it just feels
you got to do
right.
it. This is a crossover. Yeah. It always feels so weird when we do these and we don't pick our own teams, you know? You got to do it.
Yeah. Well, I've learned not to pick for the Colts because they can't deliver. And honestly, they shouldn't win any more games because they need to secure a top 5 pick regardless.
Right.
But no, this just feels like something they win. But on the flip side of it, like I could see the Vikings winning like 34-17. And like I said, Justin Jefferson goes for 200 and the Colts just can't keep up. Like I could see that happening as well. You just don't really ever know what you're going to get with that team.
And with the Vikings, the thing about this is, and for a more salient prediction, because I think score predictions are kind of boring. This is a game where I think the Vikings can get out to a lead if they can find a way to move the ball in that defense, especially with the injuries in secondary. If they can come out hot and get out to a lead, you could be sitting there at 14-0 in the second quarter, right? Just like go down, score. And I want Colts fans to understand, don't turn that game off. I know you don't feel like your offense is going to be able to make it back. Trust me. Trust me. It's been this way for 2.5 years with the Vikings. Don't turn that game off. No, you can be down 10 points with 3 minutes to go, and the Vikings will find a way to make that interesting. And that's the way that they are, which is why, like, in terms of the qualities of these teams, I mean, the Vikings, they've got the better quarterback. They've got better weapons on skill players. Like, they are better in so many places in this game, but that has been true before, and it has not mattered because they just can't put a consistent 60 minutes together. In particular, they've been a horror show in third quarters. Like, teams are going into making halftime adjustments, and I just don't think this new staff is quite pulled together enough to be able to adapt to that. But I guess if I'm going to call that a problem, like, you guys probably have that problem worse with Jeff Saturday. And I guess I got to, like, how's the staff doing with all that? I mean, you're like, how does that work?
It's almost a skeleton crew at this point, because just the order of events. So the offensive coordinator gets fired first, which scapegoat is the biggest word you can attach to that. Yeah, so offensive coordinator goes first. Then Frank Reich goes. He was your play caller. So then who do you have calling plays? They go to their assistant quarterbacks coach, Parks Frazier, who had never called plays before. And then, they've just got guys with a lot of irons in the fire. They just lost. Their tight ends coach just left to go to Stanford. So now they've got guys even spread even more thin on the offensive side of the ball doing things. So far, so Jeff Saturday obviously did not have any head coaching experience at a high level, not college or pro, coming into this whole thing.
Right.
And so Jim Irsay, of course, was like, I like that about him. He's not afraid to do, he's not jaded. He's not afraid this or that. Well, there's been some glaring issues that have come up where you could tell, some game management stuff, some, clock management. There's been times where normally you'd get just kind of a generic coach speak answer from someone else like Frank Reich or something, but Saturday is just plainly, giving you almost a naive answer. So there's certain things that are there where maybe he's in over his head at the moment, but I mean, he's obviously learning on the go. But man, it has to be all hands on deck right now, because they just don't have they literally don't have a full coaching staff right now.
Yeah. Man. And so one thing with the Vikings, they're like, an emphasis that they've had, Kevin O'Connell has talked about this a lot, is they call it like situational masters, where they actually spend a lot of their time in team meetings and stuff drilling. What do you do when there's a minute 40 and there's 2 timeouts and you're the running back? Do you go out of bounds or not? And they like really, really, really want to drill that in and have everybody absolutely be, I think about like the Mark Ingram play on Monday Night Football a couple weeks ago where he goes out of bounds and he shouldn't have, and all that. Like, that's the kind of thing Kevin O'Connell has drilled in. And then watching how a Colts game ended, I forget which one, but there was one where there was like a huge clock management issue. And I think about the contrast here. So look, the Vikings are capable of losing to anybody in any way. Please do not mistake this for confidence. But the way that they have won games, these 1-score games, if this is a 1-score situation and it comes down to, did the coach make the right 4th down decision, or did he do the right thing with the clock management? I feel like the arrow tilts in that very high leverage area really far toward the Vikings. just because of the emphasis that they have had. And then on the other hand, the Jeff Saturday problem, this is like the one team that you can expect the least from in that way. And I don't want to talk too much trash on the Colts. I'll save it for Locked On NFL. But that's where I feel like the Vikings can take this game.
That has come to fruition though. Cause I mean, a lot of people were like, obviously thought that there would be issues, and there have been. I mean, let's not, we can't act like it hasn't been a problem.
Right. So I always encourage Vikings fans, go listen to Locked On Colts. Go listen to this week of Locked On Colts. Colts fans, come on down. Listen to me on Locked On Vikings. You can come learn. So we can learn about each other and have a good time in this game. Vikings have a chance to walk away putting on t-shirts and hats in the locker room. If they can do this, they can clinch the division. So I'm hoping that they can see the stakes in front of them and see this as a great opportunity to do that in front of their home crowd. For Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts, I'm Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. We'll see y'all tomorrow on our respective shows on the Locked On NFL Podcast Network, free and available on all platforms.